unites us is that flag. What unites us is that national anthem. And the reason that we do that before every sporting event out there, I was out at the track all month long. I'll be out there tomorrow. One of the biggest events that happen is the national anthem. And I looked around. I didn't see anybody kneeling. I didn't see anybody sitting. I didn't see any driver taking offense to the national anthem. Now, I know it's a different caliber of people, and I understand that. But at the same time, I think that freedom that we have, to have that freedom, is what unites us. Rick, go right ahead.
Yeah, at the beginning of the segment, I mean, you were right on. Memorial Day weekend. This is all about the sacrifices, for our soldiers, our men and women that gave everything for the freedom of speech. And with the new NFL rule, if you want to stay in the locker room, if you want to protest, that takes away the freedom of speech. I agree with Ed. But I guess my question for Ed, though, maybe just get his best thoughts on it with the new NFL rule. In the NBA, you have to stand. I mean, you'll be in a lot of trouble, fines or whatever it is, if you do decide to kneel. You have to stand in the NBA. So why do you think nobody is up in arms about the NBA rule?
Well, yeah, I don't know why anybody's not up in arms about that. But, the NFL, if you remember back, I think maybe 10 years ago or so, they didn't even have the teams come out during the national anthem. And the NFL sort of brought this on themselves when they decided to accept money from the government to honor the troops before games. And that's why we see, these big, huge flags that are rolled out during the national anthem. And, for the home openers and for big football games, they bring out the big flag and they bring in the troops and the players stand with them and they hold the flag. But, before maybe I think 2008, somewhere around there, players stayed in the locker room. They weren't on the field for the anthem. Then they came out after the anthem. They were introduced. But now with the NFL deciding to take money from the government to honor the troops, which to me is criminal in itself, that they would accept millions of dollars from the federal government to do this. I don't know why they wouldn't do it on their own or just keep the policy in place. So, to me, they kind of brought this whole issue on themselves. And, I do not agree with the rule at all. They're not disrespecting the flag. I know it unites us. There are many things in this country that unite us, not just the flag and the anthem. We are the United States, and we should be honoring, America, and we do that in many ways. It's not just singing the anthem. There's nowhere in the Constitution that says you have to stand for the national anthem. I just think you're trampling on the, on the right to protest, which this country's founded on, the basic tenet of free speech. And we see that all the time now with, the leadership in place right now. That's what they try to do, attacking the media. To me, I'm a member of the media, and to me, I frankly have had enough of it. And I'm angry about it, to be honest with you. I'm angry about what this, what the NFL has decided to do. I'm anxious to see how it's enforced, by the owners. It's going to be a toothless policy. Teams will probably stay in the locker room before games. I don't think you're going to see, 3 or 4 people doing it. I've talked to enough players in the locker room, on both sides of whether you're for the president or against him. I've spoken to players who support him and players who don't. And they all agree that this is kind of a trampling of the basic tenet of freedom of speech.
Hey, Tom, if I can.
Go right ahead.
Can I pose a question? So I think we've gotten 2 separate issues wrapped up here for so long with this thing because, it started out with players wanting to protest, again, not protest the flag, but they decided to take that time to do it, to protest the way that African Americans were being treated by police and others. And let me ask you this. So let's say that people didn't kneel for the anthem and didn't protest. Everybody stood. But let's say 6 guys on offense after a guy scored a touchdown, took a knee, kneeled, and put a fist in the air. Will we still have issues with it? I'm sure we'd still be talking about it because there would be an issue there. So I think that we've wrapped the flag issue in with the protest issue too much, and I think we've kind of gotten away from originally what it was. But I think that if it changed to where guys did some sort of protest-type mover in the end zone after a touchdown, that we would see just as much outrage, maybe even if not more from just a different angle. So I don't know that it necessarily at times it has to do with the flag, and I think that's where we maybe have gotten lost in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mo, I agree with you. I agree with you, Rick. And Ed, actually, I do agree with you, too, as far as, the hate on the media. But we could get onto another topic about who supports our president, who doesn't support our president. I don't think this is a presidential rule. And you mentioned that money was given to the NFL by the government. I think it was certain military organizations. I don't know if it was directly from the government, but I had heard, and honestly, Ed, and this is a question because I don't have the answer to it, but I had heard that that's no longer going on. Do you know?
No, I don't see how it can. No, it isn't. I don't see it. Once it came to light, they stopped doing that. But and now, I mean, I don't know how you're going to do this if players aren't going to come out of the locker room. You're not going to have them standing with the military, to show their support. But for years they did that. But they were required to do that because the NFL was receiving money from whether it was the government or the Army or any branch of the military. I think it might have been the Department of Defense, but I'm not sure. But now that's not taking place anymore. And that's a great point Mo made. Is we're kind of wrapping up. We're talking about two things. The protests and then disrespecting the country with the flag. So I agree with Mo on that point.
Well, here's my thing. I think what we're not going to do, and again, I am not certainly trying to live under a rock and think that yes, I am a white man in suburbia America. I am not starving. I am not in jail. I don't have cops chasing me. Maybe I live that white privileged life, so I clearly admit that I do not know what it's like to be a black man. But what I can say is that I think we are aware as a country. I think we're very aware of the problems that we have. The unfortunate thing, again, not trying to live underneath a rock, but the unfortunate thing is it did come down to money. And I think that the NFL realized, just like the nation realized, that they weren't going to solve the problem. And they were getting hit economically. And you're right, Ed, that money came and then, it came to light and then it stopped. So maybe a lot of this problem was self-induced. And I get the reason why they're protests. There are cops that are bad cops. There are racist people in America. And that's an unfortunate part of our society. And it is unfortunate that there's a certain element, climate of our society that is discriminated against and is treated badly. But I just don't know that kneeling in front of the national anthem is going to change the problem or make anybody any more aware. And I think at the end of the day, it does come down to money. And fans spend money, and a lot of fans don't like the kneeling. And I think that's what it comes down to. I don't think it's a Trump thing. I don't think it's a Democrat thing or a Republican thing. I think the fan base that spends money does not like it. Even though the majority, guys, of players are black in the NFL, let's face it, the majority of black people in America follow the NBA rather than the NFL. The majority of fans at the NFL are white, privileged Americans. Rick?
I have a crazy question or whatever. Maybe some of this problem is just with the person who started the whole thing, Colin Kaepernick. What if this was somebody like Peyton Manning that started this whole thing? How different would things be today? What would the rule be? How different would this whole past 2 years be in the NFL if somebody like Peyton Manning that took a knee? Tom, I guess I'll just start that with you.
Okay, and then I'll let Ed get to that too as well. Here's exactly what would happen if Peyton Manning had done it. Nothing. Nothing would have happened. And there wouldn't have even been a following. It wouldn't have even turned into a protest because you have a white guy who doesn't know anything about being discriminated as a black man. So it would not have been latched onto. And I think that Colin Patrick, let's realize he's half white. This isn't a racist remark. Let's face it, Colin Patrick, at the end of the day, you can say what you want. It's my opinion, and I know that everybody has one. But my opinion is he was pissed off that he couldn't make it as a QB, and he wanted to stay relevant, and that was how he saw it happen because nothing in his life happened. But the media, again, Ed, I know you're part of the media. I'm not disgracing the media. They play a very vital role in everything that we do. But the media also created this monster as big as anybody else, meaning that what they did is they focused in on that. They made it a huge story. They talked about it. They talked about it. They talked about it. They talked about it. And they become more political about it than they did just covering the story. Go ahead, Ed.
Well, I mean, it's the media's job to report a story, and if someone decides that, they're going to kneel and then they talk to him afterward and say he's trying to bring to light, the social injustice that's out there, especially against the black man and woman, then it becomes a story, and you're going to write about it, and you're going to talk about it, and that's going to start the conversation. That's the media's job. But as far as Peyton Manning goes, first of all, he never would have protested because, he comes from that white privileged background. And second of all, you're right, Tom. Had he done it, nothing would have happened. It would have been a story. We would have talked about it. But then it probably would have gone away because people wouldn't have been that angered about it. But the media would have written about it. The media would have talked about it. They would have put it on television. But it wouldn't be the lightning rod that the Kaepernick situation started.
Hey, Mo, let me ask you this. Where are we at with this? What do you think? Where are we at with the media? Where are we at with the fans? Where are we at with the players? Where do we go from here?
Well, honestly, I think we've gotten to the point to where most people are just tired of it, honestly. I mean, you've got hardcore people on either side of it that want to keep doing it, people who are going to still be pissed off about it. But honestly, at the end of the day, I think most football fans just don't give a damn anymore. For me, Colin Kaepernick's been one of those guys who actually has, continued to try to follow up on it. That's what I want to see. If you're upset about it, the guys who were protesting, follow up with it. We saw guys in Denver who met with the members of the Denver Police Department. We've seen guys in other places meet with leaders. So that's what I want to see. I want to see the conversation continue to move forward. If you're going to protest, and that's what you want to do, I understand that. But figure out a way to move it forward, how to keep the conversation going, how to improve relations as opposed to just protesting. Protesting is fine, and that's your right. And when anybody wants to protest, so be it. But how can you forward the conversation and try to help resolve it and get towards a solution? And some guys have done that, some guys haven't. But at the end of the day, I think the NFL rule was stupid. I think it was a situation that was sort of, for the most part, taking care of itself. We had seen less and less and less and less guys do it. So I think at the end of the day, the NFL made a big misstep here. And like always, they've got themselves in another offseason PR mess.
Okay, Ed, we are in the off season. OTA's coming up. We know what's happened with the NFL rule. Real quickly, while we got you on the line here, just give us a preview of what's coming up in the NFL.
Okay. Well, I agree with Rick 100%. Just quickly, I mean the issue was kind of taking care of itself. Malcolm Jenkins wasn't going to protest. He wasn't going to raise his fist anymore. He said that the issue had already kind of gone under the bridge, and I don't think we would have seen any protests in the NFL. But now, because of this rule, we might see players sit in the locker room, and teams might decide, let's just stay in the locker room. We won't go out at all. So now you've kind of opened that can of worms again. I think it was a big misstep by Roger Goodell, obviously. And then he comes out and says that it was a unanimous vote. It wasn't. A lot of the owners didn't even vote on it. To me, it's just, Roger Goodell trying to be a mouthpiece to the owners, and, he miscalculated on this. But what's coming up in the NFL is you have OTAs. I know the Eagles and teams across the NFL are participating in OTAs right now. It's all voluntary stuff at this point. And then at some point, I know the Eagles open up a mandatory mini camp June 12th, 13th, and 14th, 3 days. Every team does it probably around that same time frame. And that's when it becomes mandatory, and you begin to see players at that point, if they decide to hold out because of a contract situation like a Le'Veon Bell maybe in Pittsburgh who isn't showing up for the OTAs while they try to get a contract. There are other players like that. But you need to show up for this minicamp, early in June. Otherwise, we'll see who's protesting, to get a new contract. And then after that, it's 5 or 6 weeks off, and then the NFL training camps open at the end of July. So right now it's kind of neat to see football again, practicing here in Philadelphia. Carson Wentz is recovering from the knee injury. We were able to watch practice last week. We'll be able to do it again on Tuesday. And he moved pretty well. He didn't do anything in the team drills, the 7-on-7 or the 11-on-11, but he did everything in the individual drills. And I know Andrew Luck in Indianapolis, same situation. I don't know what he's doing in the OTAs, how much throwing he's doing, but all eyes are on him and that shoulder to see if he can come back from that. I know Frank Reich isn't going to push him in any way. Same way the Eagles won't push Wentz to get better. They have Nick Foles sitting there. But, there are injuries across the league and, some key ones. Deshaun Watson in Houston, see how much he does during these OTA periods. But that's kind of what's going on right now. It's all voluntary stuff until the mandatory mini camps begin at some point early June.
Ed Kratz, we appreciate you joining us. I know you've been very busy this morning, and we appreciate you coming in and joining us and chiming in on this very